Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the North Augusta Planning Commission regular meeting for March 20th. Uh, Grateful to have all of you all with us this evening. So if we could get started with roll call, please.
Aaron Slade.
Brett Harbison.
Bob Bigger.
Jesse Elliott.
Lisa Christine.
Chelsea Waddell.
Okay. And I am your chair, Christine Crawford. All right. If we could please have the approval of the February 21st, 2024 regular meeting. Are there any changes, edits, errors? Anyone notice? Okay. All right. There being none, is there a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. We have the approval of the minutes. All right, Mr. Paradise, are there any changes or edits to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So, since we have lots and lots of guests this evening, I'll go over what the protocol for public hearings and comments. So we ask that at the appropriate time, when we ask you all to come forward, that you come forward, give your name and address. So everyone has to give their name and address, and that includes everyone. So that includes those representing applicants as well as the public who may have comments about the applications. We ask that you also take no more than 2 minutes and that you add your new thoughts to those that your neighbors may have previously shared. So we ask for 10 minutes so that everyone has the opportunity to share. And again, we ask that if you can, that you please make any additional or things that we have not heard so that we make sure that we hear everyone's perspective and thoughts on this, but not necessarily the same thing over and over again. Okay. Again, just out of courtesy and for you all to share what it is that is on your heart this evening. All right. So given that, we will proceed with RZM 24-001 Ford Tract, Escuga Lake Road. And one other comment, if there's anyone in the audience who needs accommodations for whom the stairs are not manageable, then please let us know and we'll ask Mr. Paradise to bring you a microphone. Okay. All right, Mr. Paradise, would you please share anything that you have on this?
Yes, ma'am. This is a request to rezone a parcel of what is commonly referred to as the Ford Tract because it was owned by Dr. Ford or is. BRD Land and Investment is requesting to rezone 128.79 acres of this parcel. And you can see how this parcel backs up to Interstate 20 on the back side, and then it's landlocked on the front with a couple of other parcels that's owned by Dr. Ford. This gives you a better idea. The yellow is R10 currently. The brown is currently R7. The other, I don't know what you call the other color, but it's not in the city limits. So where you see Northridge and Howard Mill and Franklin, those are not currently in the city limits of North Augusta. So they don't have a current zoning with us. And the request is just to rezone the one subject parcel there. You see about 3 or 4 R10 there adjacent to Escuga Lake Road. The application does not include those parcels. This just gives you an idea. This is the bread and butter, as I usually refer to it. And let me back up a second. And along here, you can see a line. On this side of that line is currently zoned R10. Excuse me, R7. On this side of that line, it's currently zoned R10 here and all the way down to here. These houses here will meet the requirement. This is a proposed development that's in the conceptual phase that they're talking about. These lots here would meet the R10 requirements. These in here would not, because of the size of the lot, and thus the request to rezone. What is the result of that is the minimum lot size in the R10 is 10,000 square feet. Minimum lot size in the R7 is 7,000 square feet. R10, you can have up to 4.5 dwelling units per acre. R7, you can have 7 dwelling units per acre. And as far as uses go, R10, you can have single family attached, and that's pretty much it. Whereas in the R7, you can have single family attached. R10 is single family detached. R7 is single family detached, single family attached, and duplex. You can still, apartments are not allowed in the R7 zoning district. Now, just to look at what is being proposed here, and of course we're just looking at this portion here, but the applicant provided this, so I wanted to talk about it just a minute in case they did that. You have 300, and out of that 386 single family detached homes with, and then you have single family attached over here in the that's already zoned R7. And then you have 80 acres of green space, and you have 2.48 dwelling units per acre. So this, I think it all comes down to lot size in here. But any questions for me?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the number of dwellings you said per acre that it currently has?
It's currently 4.5 dwelling units.
Right.
And it would allow it to go to 7 per acre. Okay. And right now, based on this plan here, you're at 2.48 dwelling units per acre.
All right. So next, are there any other questions for Mr. Paradise from any of the commissioners at this time? Okay. Next, we will hear from the applicant. So if the applicant, please make your way forward to the microphone and give your name and address. And what we'll do after the applicant speaks is we will allow and open up the public hearing portion. And again, give your name and address and ask your questions. But what we'll do is ask that the applicant keep track of the questions as they're asked. And then once everyone has finished, step back up and address all of the questions at that time. Okay. All right. All right.
Excuse me. Madam Chairwoman, I forgot. First thing is I received 2 emails, and I have forwarded those emails to y'all, and they're also on the dais for you, and I'm sorry about interrupting you. Let me say who those were from.
No, please do.
One is from Lisa Strickland, and the other one was from Dan Comcast. And I just wanted to make sure it was on the record that y'all got them. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
My name's Andrew Lofton with Kimley Horn. Address is 200 South.
I'm sorry, if you could speak, pull the mic up and maybe speak a little louder. If you could start over for me.
Okay. Andrew Lofton with Kimley Horn. Address is 200 South Tryon Street, Suite 200, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28202. Here on behalf of BRD Land and Investment. As Mr. Paradise mentioned, and there was a very well thought out staff report, which I do appreciate. It's one of the better ones we've seen. We're looking to rezone one parcel to match the zoning of the majority of the rest of the properties in order to create a cohesive and comprehensive neighborhood. Due to the topographic restraints on the site, the smaller lots respect the existing topography by preserving open space. The smaller lots also meet market demands. Our homeowners are looking for ease of maintenance with the smaller lots. Property is currently within the city limits, zoned for residential, which help meet the desired growth plans for the city and the need for housing in South Carolina. In the context of the rezoning, we were asked to provide a plan on how this property would integrate with the adjacent properties, which is the plan you see before you tonight. Tonight is only an ask for the zoning in order to move forward with construction plans. The details of the site plan will be reviewed, revised, and approved through submittals to the city and abide by the city's development code as well as DHEC and DOT. We want to take this opportunity. I have a handout of it's the exact same plan, just a little prettier picture.
Yeah. Thank you.
And just want to start with the preservation and buffering of environmental features, perimeter buffers, and topographic changes on the site. The plan incorporates stormwater regulations, and we reserve area on the plan for stormwater ponds. We incorporate open space within the project and provide amenity spaces for our future residents. One of the requests we've received to date is from the eastern adjacent property owned by the State Parks Department. We'll be leaving road access to that property for future connection opportunities. We're also providing stub roads to the western property as we understand there is a desire from that property owner to develop a mixed-use site. As part of this project, a traffic impact study will be required and is currently underway. Road improvements that are required as part of that study will be developer funded and installed, not funded through tax dollars. We've also worked with North Augusta Utilities Department as part of the rezoning request and will be extending and connecting to City of Augusta utilities, water and sewer as part of the project. And we have assurance from the Utilities Department that there is capacity and ability to serve this proposed neighborhood. We're happy to answer any questions from the commission and are available to come back up to address comments from the public. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you. Are there any questions at this point from the commissioners?
Not off the top of my head, but they have been delineated, and that's what's shown on the plan.
What do you know? What are the lot sizes? I know because the units per acre is still under. So I assume the lot sizes are a good bit smaller. So do you know about those sizes?
They are 50 by 120. And the yellow are 60 by 120. The orange are 50 by 120.
I have a question on the portion that's part of supposedly the Ford track, and I can kind of, I think it says wetland. It's not showing in this map right now what would be, it's currently zoned R10. Any future idea of what's planned for that? It's kind of grayed out.
So what's left of the Ford property?
Correct.
That is the Ford. The Fords are keeping that parcel. We are only subdividing the strip that's in green for this project.
Could you repeat that into the mic again?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
So the Fords are keeping the grayed out portion. We are only subdividing the green strip for our connection road.
All right. Are there any other questions from the commissioners for the applicant at this time? Okay. There being none, if you could have a seat, and it's Mr. Lofton, L-O-F-T-O-N. Okay, Mr. Lofton, and if you could please keep track of the questions from the community as we start that portion. All right. So at this point, we will open up the public hearing portion, and those who wish to come forward again, please give your name, address. Please, again, respect the 2-minute time limit so that we have plenty of time to hear from your fellow neighbors as well. All right. Thank you.
My name is James Marr. I reside at 2130 Howard Mill Road, adjacent to this new property development. I just have some brief comments here. I'll try and keep it to the 2 minutes. You know, the average person would rather do something risky or dangerous than speak in public. I'm the average person. That being said, I felt the need to speak out tonight as I feel very strongly about the development that has been proposed to this commission regarding the parcels in our neighborhood. It is my understanding that back in the late 80s and early 90s, Dr. James Ford had a vision for what is now called Sudlow Crossing. This vision that actually became a reality is a community of diversity with every home as distinctive as the individual residents. The average size of each parcel is about an acre, plus or minus 10%. If you drive through our community, you will see that it is beautiful, peaceful, and mostly quiet neighborhood where people take pride in their homes. The only noise comes from the traffic on I-20 and I-520. I feel fortunate to have found such a community to live in. When I got the letter in the mail about the proposal for this new property development in the woods behind our neighborhood, I wanted to find out what my neighbors thought about this plan. So I went about asking them how they felt about the proposed development. I was surprised to find that many of them had not been notified about the proposal. However, after hearing about what was proposed, they were all overwhelmed with the expected density and housing in this plan. The residents of the existing homes are definitely opposed to the proposal and the requested zone change to allow this excessive density and have signed a petition stating this. I will be submitting this to the commission tonight. Now, we all have seen how much North Augusta has grown in just the past couple of years. The traffic has become ridiculous. We have heard or read about plans for dense housing tracts all throughout North Augusta, Graniteville, and many other parts of Aiken County. However, one size does not fit all. I think we realize that progress cannot be stopped because the city, like any other business, is either growing or declining. The developers are asking you to consider the needs and wants of residents who may buy and move into the homes in the future. But the Planning Commission needs to strike a balance between the wants of the developers and the needs and wants of those who already live, work, shop, and pay taxes for existing homes in this area. The proposed housing density is just not appropriate for our area or our neighborhood. So we, the residents of Sudlow Crossing and the other surrounding adjacent properties, are also asking for a zone change. We believe that this newly proposed development should fit in harmoniously with the existing housing of our neighborhood, which is primarily single-family, residential, one house per acre. We're asking that the parcel in question, as well as the other adjoining parcels to be used in this proposed development, be changed to single-family, residential, single-house zoning. This would still allow for the developers to build nearly 200 homes on the parcels in question and still leave some breathing room for all of us. We are also concerned about the additional traffic through our neighborhood. We would like assurances that Howard Mill Road and North Ridge Road will remain as dead ends and not be extended through to the new development. The only reason for building such dense housing as has been proposed by this developer is pure greed. They're happy to squeeze as much housing as they can into any area, adding their bank accounts in the process, and then walk away, leaving the rest of us to deal with the overcrowding and all the issues that come along with it. Commission members, please consider our requests as you make the recommendations to the City Council on this proposed development.
Thank you.
And may I present a copy of this?
If you'll hand it to Ms. Paradise, he'll bring it to us. Thank you.
Petition signed by all of our neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Do you need all, is it one copy? Okay. All right. So what we'll do is, because there's only one copy, is that I'll just ask Mr. Paradise tell us how many names are on the petition, and then and when you get back to your mic, so it's in a record, and then we'll resume. Thank you all for your patience. Okay.
Yes, ma'am, there's 68 signatures
Okay.
on the petition.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Paradise. All right. Thank you. If you could please share your name and address. And
My name is Phyllis Britt. I live at 1007 Hilton Street in Aiken, but I have 3 grandchildren who live on North Ridge Road, right at the point where this project starts. I have 2 concerns, both of which were mentioned by the previous speaker, but one of them is North Ridge Road. Will it be extended? I mean, I know you don't know this, but to get it in the record and to make sure that he covers this, will they open North Ridge Road, or will it stay the way it is now as a dead end? And the second thing is, just to emphasize, 554 lots means more than 1,000 cars coming onto Oscaga Lake Road, no matter which way they come, is going to be a nightmare. That corner right there where the light is already horrible. There are lots of accidents there. And with that many people coming out, you know, if you leave the zoning the way it is, it will be bad enough. But if you change the zoning, you double the number of people who will be driving that way every day. Thank you.
all right. Thank you. And all right, if we could please next come forward.
Frank Byers, 2124 Howard Mill Road. I would like to bring up the question, at one time, some of this land was contaminated and it wasn't allowed to be built on. I don't know if that is still true or not. The other question I have, is there a proposal? We have enough trouble with floodwater now at this area, especially going down to Oscaga Lake Road. It all runs that direction and toward Misty Lake. That ought to be taken into effect if you're going to rezone this thing. I think it should be left as is. Also, the sewer, my understanding, has to have a lift station. If a lift station is required, the upkeep of that property will be tremendous because it has to be maintained yearly and has to have a situation where if the power goes down, something will prevent it from overspilling into the property. So that should be considered before we start rezoning and allowing more homes. I think the zoning ought to be left as is. I hope you all feel the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional? Okay, I think we have.
Yes, ma'am. Wayne Jones. I live at 2106 North Ridge Road, North Augusta. I've been a resident of this area for about 36 years. May I borrow your pointer, please? Thank you, sir. I live right about here. My house is on 1.33 acres. I've watched this community grow over these years, and I've seen the traffic build up. It was only a few years ago that we finally got a stoplight at Oscaga Lake Road and Sudlow Lake Road, and we appreciate it. The areas that they're looking at putting entrance on both of these 2 sides here is of significant importance because they're in the bend of a road in a crucial situation. The area on the right-hand side of this, up in here, is currently designated R10. And in the initial proposal, in the site plan up here, they talk about they want to rezone that into R7 as well. So that means there could be additional properties subdivided in this section and made not what they are now. There's a lot of wetlands in the area. They indicate that they have 80 plus acres that they plan to use as open land.
They have to because of the wetlands. We talk about the stormwater problem that was mentioned a while ago. In 2018, or 2016 and 2017, there was a lawsuit presented by the people that adjoined 520 with stormwater drainage that ran down to Oscaga Lake Road and damaged houses on the other side. While the initial plan that we had posted indicated that you wanted to just talk about rezoning that one section up there, they didn't fail to mention that we were planning to turn around and build 490 units that surrounded a unit that currently has about 65 units in it. As stated before, the density is totally unacceptable. We understand that there has to be a plan for future development. But I think last month you approved a section not near this location, but was going to be 800 and some units. When do we say enough is enough and we start looking at what's going on there? The traffic density for the major roads of Oscaga Lake Road and Sedlow Lake Road can't handle what you're talking about putting in this location. I agree with the first speaker that talked about the size of the lots that needed to be in there to keep them in conformity to the rest of the area. If you go in and look at Aiken County GIS and look at the lots that surround this area, you can see that there are no lots that are as small as what we're talking about putting in here now. I appreciate your time, and I just want to say again, I wish you would really consider what you're looking at here and look at what it's going to do. After 36 years, I'd hate to think that the community I live in and I've loved so much is going to turn into the nightmare that we're looking at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert Lewis, Andrew Lewis. I live at 5 North Ridge Court. And yes, our two huge concerns are the two little green spots in between houses, right where North Ridge Drive is and Howard Mill. We're really concerned that they don't tie in to our neighborhood to access our green light. Our neighborhood has a lot of children in it, and we don't need that much extra cars going through to be able to, because you know there's going to be younger people, they're going to act crazy, they're going to speed. We don't have speed bumps, speed humps, speed bumps, whichever. That's a huge concern. The other is, adding to the density of this, you'll be adding to more homes. You're also got up beside the QT gas station, you got ATC construction building 300 to 300 plus apartments, and you got other apartment complexes being built inside the city limits of North Augusta. And I don't know what the city manager or if the city even has a economic developer to do anything about restaurants to accommodate for this growth change. Schools, they just built a new middle school was just built, but an elementary school is going to be overcrowded. I really suggest that the council please look at the nightmares that Columbia County is going through. They've, over the past 5 to 10 years, they are overgrowing without the infrastructure being built ahead of time. And you've got exit 190. That area is a complete nightmare because the county did not take into account for the growth that they allowed before what should be done ahead of time. And like I said, the biggest thing I'm concerned about is those two little empty green spaces where it can be tied in to our neighborhood, which we don't want. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Okay, we got one, at least one more question, and then we'll allow the applicant to respond and answer the questions as presented.
Hi, my name's Dan McCurry. I live at 3 Northridge Court, North Augusta. And so my neighbor's Andrew, who just spoke. So I'm kind of right at that point at the very end of the dead end there on Northridge Road. So one of the couple houses that's actually right at that point that's being discussed. I'm not at all an expert in land and planning and real estate. I'm more of a computer guy. But I did want to thank and echo the comments made by my neighbors. The applicant stated that there was market demand for these smaller size lots. I suggest there might be some demand as well for the lot sizes, perhaps that the existing Sudlow Crossing community already is at. Again, I don't know the studies that would show that there's more so demand one way or the other there. Agree with the traffic concerns. As it is, we can't keep cars out of the ditch between 25 and the light at Sudlow Crossing. Certainly, again, concur with the comments made on traffic considerations there. I did also provide an email as one of the two there that provided the email. And again, not a expert in these areas, but if there could be additional buffer consideration, certainly between these neighborhoods, particularly where you can see at certain points along the map where there's almost no green in between the neighborhoods. Perhaps there could be a little bit more uniform buffer there. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a request, I think, for the mic in the back. Tommy, if you could please take that mic. What with the red T-shirt? It says stars, I think. He'll come to you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Beverly Simpson, and I probably lived in the neighborhood longer than anybody. I was like the first person to move in there. But I don't have a lot to add to what my neighbors have said. We do have a lot of concerns about what's going on. My daughter is a teacher at Belvedere Elementary, where most of all of our kids are zoned for, and they're busting at the seams. We're not really allowing time for the area to keep up with the growth in the housing that's going on. So I have concern about that throughout North Augusta. But primarily, I would like to just add to the statement regarding the petition. The only reason why there's only 68 names on that is, number one, even people in our neighborhood were unaware of what was going on, unless you just stop long enough to look at a sign as you're riding down the road on Oscarga Lake, and nobody goes that slow on Oscarga Lake. And my daughter lives across over in Barclay Estates, and all of those people on that side of Oscarga Lake, everybody that has, even lakes and streams, that has to go up and down that road would have had something to say about this. And we probably would have had more signatures if we hadn't had just one guy that took it upon himself, and I applaud him for doing that, going around and getting signatures. So just because there's only 68 names, don't think that's all who are opposed to this situation. And then my main concern is, like one of my other neighbors said, we don't want those trucks and equipment coming through our neighborhood to go over there to build that stuff. And we don't want those people zooming back. What you don't see on there is that Howard Mill is a huge, steep hill. And I live on it. Did I say where I live? 2106 Howard Mill Road, sorry. And so, yes, people just zoom down through there as it is, but they don't have that far to zoom right now because there's not that much road there. But there will be if you have 400 plus houses exiting there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. All right, let me get the gentleman with the white shirt and the tie on, and then Tommy, we have the young woman with the green and the over next to the woman in the hoodie, Adidas hoodie. Come down to the third row on this side. All right.
Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. I hope you are. My name's Brian Redd, and I live at 2116 Franklin Drive in Sudlow Crossing. My wife and I have lived there for 32 years. And my wife's already talking about wanting to move because of this. I really don't want to have to buy another house. I can tell you that what they're calling a nightmare, I would call irresponsible, because this doesn't show the topography. But if you go from left to right on that map, Muskogee Lake Road goes down like this. And I'll give you a little bit of my background. I was an appraiser, real estate appraiser for 17 years in Georgia. I also retired from law enforcement, so I have a really unique perspective in Georgia. And one of the things you're going to have problems with, it was mentioned somewhat, is runoff. This road runs downhill like that. We've already had tremendous runoff problems. I almost weekly, it's standing at the top of my driveway, you can hear cars crashing, right? Because they don't know to stop the way that red light sits. If someone's making a left-hand turn, if there's a car behind them, the next car doesn't see the first one's turning, and it goes into the ditch or runs into the car in front of it. All this runoff, like I said, when it rains, it's going to be a nightmare is not the right word for it. You're going to have people get killed on this road with that. And also, with that many units being brought in, I hope y'all are going to hire some additional police officers, because it's going to bring more crime to that area. We love where we live. We've been there 32 years. It's a peaceful neighborhood. I liked leaving Georgia, which is crime-ridden across. I work in Superior Court now over there. And you're going to, when you bring 500 units in there, our neighborhood's going to change from being a nice place to live. I heard the word nightmare a couple of times. It's just going to be awful. So, I mean, this is really distressing to see this. And also, these folks I didn't know were from Charlotte. They'll build whatever they're going to put in there. They're going to make their money. They'll leave us to hold the bag. That's what'll happen. It'll change our place from being a nice place to live to being a terrible place to live. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. All right, we have a, ma'am, if you could please say your name and address.
Okay. I'm Debbie Ruffner, and I live at 103 Country Place Drive, and I'm going to speak for the people on the other side of Muskogee Lake Road. Country Place Drive is one road down from Blanchard, if you're familiar with that. Coming out of our subdivision is a death trap right now. I mean, so many people have had wrecks there. You'll look to the left, they fly down Muskogee Lake Road. It's a curve. You look there, you look back this way, you look back here, they're coming back. You can sit there. You can forget it in the morning, and you can forget it in the afternoon. That's why we were late getting here, trying to get out, unless some kind person says they'll let you out. That many houses, I'm not sure where it's going to be coming out. I don't know if it's going to be right across Country Place Drive or not. But you're going to look to the left, you're going to look to the right, and then you've got to wait for those people, because they're going to have the right of way to go up, and by that time, here comes the traffic again. We've had a wreck there in recent years that nearly killed one of our neighbors. And it's constant, like you say, hearing those screeching brakes, and Country Place Drive sign, finally we had to do away with it because it got knocked down so many times, the big sign. That's one thing. And as far as the water flow, we have had to spend thousands of dollars to repair our driveways because the county nor the state would take responsibility for the drainage ditch that was coming through, and we'd have a big flood. It would just wash out the whole thing. So those are, besides all the concerns that's been mentioned, those are my concerns, is that, you know, we'll have to take a right, go around and turn around to come back up to Chicago. Like, that's how bad the traffic is already. So that's my concerns. I hope you will consider that.
Thank you. All right, are there any other? Okay, we have one more coming down, and then we'll allow the applicant to start responding.
Hello, my name is Shannon Kitts.
If you could bend the mic down and make sure.
Yeah, the short person.
Thank you.
My name is Shannon Kitts, and I live at 2003 Buckhall Drive, which is actually in Barclay Estates, which is across from all of this where Blanchard comes in. We border Blanchard. We had no notification. Actually, if it hadn't been for the lovely app next door, I would have not known to be here. So most everything has been addressed, but a couple of things. We have noticed there's a trend of these proposals being done, and then they're approved, and all of the land is timbered, and then they disappear. And you'll see about a year from now, the property is back up for sale. My property is actually surrounded by that. It's right there on 25 in Oscaga Lake. There's a big, huge tract where it was just timbered. It's all up and down. There's one big one on Sudlow Lake that was also done the same way. And there's certainly no need to timber that, take the money, and then we're left with all the stormwater that everybody is concerned about. The other issue is this is a pocket of the city of North Augusta surrounded by Aiken County. So where does that leave like the fire and police? I know some of the utilities have already been addressed, and also zoning for schools. And then our schools are going to get overcrowded. They're going to go back with all their profit, and we're stuck having to spend SPLOST or another grant or another whatever y'all want to call it. The taxpayers are the ones having to pay to maintain the infrastructure for this growth. And I don't feel like that's fair, and it should not fall on the citizens when we're not the ones profiting from it. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kitts. All right, so, well, okay. So let me make sure that nobody else who hasn't spoken, and then, and if you could make it maybe 30 seconds. Okay, and then we will go and allow the applicant to respond.
I just want to make a quick statement while the applicant's here. I do not and never will grant right of way on my property for their vehicles to come through. They were in and out all day today with drilling rigs and pickup trucks driving through the corner of my property. So you're on notice. Stay off my property. If you want to get on there, go through cut yourself another road to go through, but don't go through my backyard. That's
Thank
it.
you. All right, thank you. All right, if the applicant could please come forward and begin addressing the questions and concerns.
You need me to state address, name again?
No, just state your name again, and then maybe put the mic up a little because you make sure that we can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
A little louder if you could.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you.
Andrew Lofton. I appreciate everyone's concern, and I want to get with the geotech concern that you just voiced. I apologize for that, and we will be in touch with them and make sure that is taken care of and will not happen again.
So, again, if you could say that louder, because I'm sure that they weren't sure what you were referring to.
Okay,
That handheld might be better. Yeah, thank you.
So the geotech issue he just mentioned about people cutting on his property, I apologize for that.
Hold on 1 second. Can we get the mic turned up in the back, please? Mr. Lofton, you have a soft voice for radio, but we need to amplify it a little bit for everyone to be able to hear it. All right, let's try it again.
Does that sound better?
Can we get a little more volume on the mic, please? Got me? Okay, Mr. Lofton, speak again, please.
Is that any better?
A little better. Let me get one more. You can't get any more on the mic?
Okay.
All right.
I'll talk louder.
Okay, thank you.
So I know the Howards Mill and Northridge connection, we have zero intent on making those connections. The green spaces are there in case during the process that request was asked. We planned for that, but we do not desire to push traffic through that existing neighborhood. Another big concern was traffic. As I mentioned previously, we are running through a traffic impact analysis that is currently being done, and whatever requirements that are made or that are needed, the developer will fund and build at their cost. Flooding, we'll be meeting state city requirements on flooding, so we will not be pushing any more water off of the property than is currently going off now. The lift station concerns, yes, there is likelihood that we will need a lift station, and have passed that along to the city utilities, and they understand, and they will be the ones maintaining the property. And we will have to, as was mentioned, if the power goes out, they will be designed to, if the power goes out, there'll be a backup generator, so it will not back up and flood. The question was on the southeast corner of the Ford property. The zoning, we are not going to ask for another zoning. The condition of the sale is that that parcel remain R10. Wetlands, we have, as I previously mentioned, we have gotten those delineated, and we'll protect those as we can. The question of the schools, we will work with county, city, and do whatever is needed to work with them to help lessen the impact.
Okay, if we could please be respectful and allow him to answer.
On buffers, we are happy to increase buffers as needed, even at the cost of losing lot yield. And I know the neighborhood meeting was mentioned. The neighborhood meeting was not a requirement of our rezoning. We did that a voluntary neighborhood meeting, and the notices were put out to adjacent property owners. And then on the timbering question, we have no plan on timbering this and leaving. That is not what BRD does. They're a developer, and once the project is started, they will see it through. And I believe that covers.
I had one other question that I think Mr. Byers asked about. Was the land contaminated? I think was
that, from my understanding, is the Howard property to our west, not on our property.
Okay. And I think you got, you talked about the exits. So I think you got the others. Questions. Mr. Paradise, were there any questions that you needed to respond to on behalf of the city?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right.
Well, somebody mentioned about public safety, fire, and all that, how that would work being right on the edge.
If they're inside the city limits, our public safety department would be responsible for responding and taking care of their emergency needs, as well as the other city services would be provided out there, such as garbage collection, rubbish, street pickup, that kind of stuff.
And then, all right. Are the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Lofton? Go ahead, Chelsea.
Do we know these lots, if they were in the city limits, what they would be zoned for this neighborhood?
Probably, if they are an acre size. I haven't looked at it and done analysis, but what I'm hearing tonight, it'd probably be R14 with the lot size. But remember, an R14, which is the largest size lot we require in the city, is still a third of an acre.
All right. And my question is, what is the, so we've heard about the density. So the density either currently is still less than what is required for R10, but what is the difference in units between if it were not changed? So how many units would it be, or have you all looked at the configuration?
We have not looked at the configuration for just R10.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions for Ms. Summer? We may call you back up because some folks look like they're thinking. So we may reserve the right to call you back up at the end of our discussion. Okay. All right. Thank you. You can have a seat for right now. All right, commissioners, please. We are open for discussion and or a motion. If there are any concerns or comments, please share.
This may fall back right into you. Sorry if I let you sit down to get back up. But if saying we don't approve it, what would your plans look like from there? Would you still plan on doing something there that fits into the current zoning, or is this kind of a deal breaker or not? Do you understand that question?
Yes, please.
Sorry to make you hop back up.
No, it's over.
Just trying to think of the best way to word that question.
So I believe, Andrew Lofton, I believe if the rezoning request was not passed, the density likely would not work for the property.
And that's just because of topography and wetlands and
Yes.
all the things.
All the things, yes.
Do you know the current buffer between, let's see, I wrote it down earlier, lots 20 through 11, and then on the backside, that front road, you mentioned that you would be willing to increase those buffers at the risk of losing lots. Do you know what those currently, that buffer is?
I believe it's 20, but those are actually the specific lots that I was mentioning. We would be willing to increase that buffer because I know it gets tight right there.
So if we increase that to a 50-foot buffer on that side.
Yes.
Mr. Harbison, I think I might know where you're going, and just to remind you, this is a rezoning, so it's either yes or no. You don't place conditions on rezoning. Now, at the site plan, might be different, but.
And this yes or no is for the recommendation to city
Yes,
council.
ma'am.
Okay. So let me also just clarify again. So our vote yes or no is a recommendation to city council for their further action in their April meeting. Okay. All right. Any other?
Not necessarily for you, but just clarification with Tommy. Again, one thing he stated, it was not their intention to cut the roads through the existing neighborhood. At some point in the future, could somebody else make that decision, even or the city make that decision for fire and safety hazard access? What controls the linking of that through the existing neighborhood in the future?
One is that is probably looking, I don't know for sure, but that is probably a county road. So you would need, encroachment permit from the county. But from your end, you will see a major subdivision application should this project or similar project like this come to you. And then you would have those connections either on the plan or not on the plan, and you would see those there and could vote on it. Now, and I don't know, we haven't reviewed it. Our code may require those connections, but at the same time, as y'all will hear later tonight, it's not uncommon for a developer to request a waiver. And it has been in the past because typically established neighborhoods don't like to be connected with new neighborhoods, even though it makes sense for public safety and all of that. Usually y'all grant those waivers.
And again, a related question. Again, our left-hand side of this parcel is currently already zoned R7. The conceptual plan here has some townhomes on it already. Again, what we have here in the part they're asking for rezoning is, again, a conceptual plan. They could come back 6 months, 3 months later. If rezoned, could allow for similar townhomes in there as well. Is that just to clarify?
That's correct.
Right.
Nothing is, you see on the bottom note of that plan is conceptual in nature and subject to change based on final design and approval. So if it is zoned to R7, theoretically, and I don't think this is their intent, but they could come back and be a townhome subdivision. Or if they walked away from this rezone and they walk away, then that property is rezoned to R7, and whoever comes in to develop it does it under those regulations.
Thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions, Mr. Lofton? Okay, then I think we'll, thank you. All right. I want to, conversation, motion. You want to look like you want to?
I'll just, while Mike's still on, my personal opinion, again, they've got a sizable portion of the property that's already zoned to R7. My concern is, right, if we do rezone it, somebody else comes back in, they could, even though it's not their intention as stated, that somebody else comes in, or they come back with a plan a year from now, and hey, this is the only way we can develop it, is by putting X number of townhomes in there, and it just creating an even greater density issue than what's even sitting in front of us right now. So I'm therefore against the rezoning.
I'm also
could y'all please let us continue?
Also, just to continue what you said, I also am against it just because I don't think that this plan is compatible with the surrounding areas, and I do have a lot of concerns about traffic, and I know there could be like traffic lights in the future, and we can't see the future yet, but just my 2 cents on that.
Just to go third in line here, sorry, but I guess I understand the concerns of everyone here, and I want to take them into account, but I think the bigger issue here is that I have not seen good evidence for why this needs to be rezoned from the perspective of the contractor, the developer. They haven't given me a reason besides the numbers that this is anything more than just additional financial security for them, and I don't think that that is a good reason to rezone this property.
I appreciate everyone's comments tonight. Along the same lines, if you're cutting units, I think there's still, I know your comment was that you would probably do nothing with it, but I think there's still probability to build something else. So I'm against it also.
Any other?
And just one comment for the existing residents. Of course, you all know, you've got a road that dead ends into a piece of property. Something's going to be developed there. You knew that when you moved in. It's unfortunate. It's something we all face in these neighborhoods. So, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight and speaking up to at least express your concerns about that. But there's, development is coming in some shape. We can do what we can to protect it as best we can. But there is some risk that some development is going to come at some point.
And so let me also say, I think to the applicant, it would have been helpful to know, I think, what it would have looked like if it had been to compare, right? And so if we were handicapping you, then knowing what it would have looked like had it been R10 and say, would have been helpful for us, I think, in that consideration. And again, just to reiterate what Commissioner Bigger said, that given the density, if they move on, somebody could come in at R10 tomorrow and with just from density, put in almost twice as many homes as are shown here. So just want you all to understand, because everybody was cheering, that you could get something else that looks very different and not necessarily in the direction that you all are assuming. If council makes that decision, because again, our vote is for a recommendation. But either way, I need a motion, and then we can vote yay or nay, but I need a motion in the positive, please. Are there any other comments or discussion around this? Okay. All right. If I could please have a motion.
I'll make the motion regarding RZM 24-001 for the North Augusta Scogga Lake Drive request for rezoning from a R10 current to R7 small lot, single family residential. I make a motion for a vote.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of it being rezoned from R10 to R7, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Thank you. All right. Okay. All right, thank you. And next on the agenda is a consideration for PDM 24-001 Hammond's Ferry at Riverside Village. At this point, I, as chair, am going to recuse myself as a member of that neighborhood and am going to ask Commissioner Vice Chair Bigger to act as chair in this portion of the meeting. I will take. Good.
Giving just a second for the prior crowd to clear out and the noise to come back. As we go into this process will be very similar to what we just went through with the prior motion. We will review the proposal, have the applicant speak on behalf of it, open it for public discussion. Again, ask. I do not have Dr. Crawford's timer in front of me, but ask that you keep your comments brief so that everybody that has a chance to speak, it looks like we've got several folks that are here that will plan to speak this evening. Ask that you keep your comments to a reasonable amount of time, and please remember not to come and repeat the same comments that we had from the prior speakers. With that, I'll open up PDM 24-001. Hammond's Ferry, Riverside Village, the planned development major modification request. Mr. Paradise, do you want to give us a summary of this request, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is a modification for the Hammond's Ferry development plan. As you can see, Hammond's Ferry encompasses both what I call the residential portion or Phase A, and then you have Phase B, which is the Riverside Village ballpark area. So this request, they're all in that same PD. So the PD that needs to be modified includes that whole area, but we're only looking at the Phase B property. This gives you an idea here of what we're looking at. And I think, here we go. That's the map I was looking for here. All right, the development, it was originally developed as a public-private partnership between the city of North Augusta and North Augusta Riverfront Company. And portions of the property are still owned by the city, and portions have been transferred to private partners, including the majority of the remaining property is to be developed in Riverside Village. The PD General Development Plan, the PD Ordinance, and the Master Parking Agreement all apply to all of the land within the PD regardless of the current zoning. In other words, this PD serves as the zoning ordinance for that area. City staff, Greenstone, which is the master developer, and South City developers have been working on this proposal and development for probably about the last 6 months. It's been in the discussion phase. And I would say that the city, the South City developer, along with Greenstone, are all partners in this application, even though the city doesn't own the property proposed to be developed. Last Monday night, City Council approved a master parking agreement that will cover these modifications and the parking in this Phase B area. And the reason you have a parking agreement there is normally when you do zoning, you look at a parcel and you say, okay, X use, you need so many parking spaces. And those parcel spaces have to be provided on that parcel. Well, the whole concept of Riverside Village, not the rest of Hammond's Ferry, but of Riverside Village was an urban feel. And with urban feel, you don't do that. You utilize parking garages. So the master parking agreement, which was approved by council, looked at all of the scenarios and fit those in as where the parking would be created and be handled at. So that was last Monday night. They kind of checked the box on that. And in the ordinance, the master parking agreement, if there's one of those in effect, that covers the parcels as long as they comply with that. The modifications to the PD apply only those parcels in Riverside Village. Anything from Lafayette right here, this side is not included. In fact, when we were doing this, staff and the developers took great strides into not doing anything that might inadvertently affect Phase A. That's why a lot of the things in the ordinance you see specifies Phase B. That keeps us in check. The other thing that we have heard people push back on the last few days is about Preservation Park being turned into a parking lot. Let me tell you, that is not under discussion. That is not part of this plan. What is in the proposed PD is the same verbiage for Preservation Park that is in the existing PD. There's no change there. So there again, that's on the other side of Lafayette Street. So with that said, some of the changes, this was started back a while back, and the city's gone through a lot, and one of them is COVID, and that's changed the look on how people do business. So one of the things is changing the uses on these various parcels to make them usable in today's economic environment. And so you're on parcel C, which is this one, that's supposed to be an office building. Well, nobody's building office buildings right now. COVID kind of changed the way we look at office buildings. So that would be changed to floor level retail and 87 residential units. Over here on parcel D, those blue, those are 9 townhomes, and then you have retail at the end. So the developer is maintaining that mixture of residential and retail. Then we go down to parcel K, and this one here is 170 apartments. This was originally proposed for senior living. That hadn't come to fruition, and so instead of putting seniors in there, it would be market rent. And then G and H down here, that is commercial residential in the plan now, and it will be commercial residential going forward in this plan, except that you'll have 58 apartments here, and then you'll have retail here in the yellow. And down on parcel I, you'll have it was originally in the PD as it is now is residential. And in this PD, you would have 11 townhomes. Now, that's a summary of the change of uses. Let me get into some of the specifics, as you would say, into the weeds. So I got it here. The modification increases the maximum residential in Phase B so that the average gross residential and total number of residential units to be constructed in Riverside Village, not on the other side of Lafayette, but in Riverside Village, goes from 24 dwelling units per acre to 28 dwelling units per acre. Or, in raw numbers, that's 933 residential units to 1,163 residential units. It also updates the development chart in the PD ordinance. That kind of just goes along with what you're doing. There's an Exhibit C in here that includes the changes to Phase B. And this has caused some confusion too. Exhibit A of the pattern book, which is included in this ordinance, would be updated to reflect the Exhibit A adopted in the PD ordinance. There's no other changes in the pattern book. The pattern book stays the same, except here's what this exhibit is showing now for the build out of this PD, and we're updating it to what would be in the new modified ordinance. The ordinance for Phase B should prevail in the event of a conflict between the ordinance, Hammond's Ferry Pattern Book, covenants and restrictions, or Hammond's Ferry Business District Association Declaration of Codes. That is in there basically for setbacks. As y'all may remember, there was a recent rezoning of parcel G's and H, the downtown mixed use 2. Well, when we got into this, we were designing this as downtown mixed use 2. Well, as downtown mixed use 2, they didn't have to meet any of the PD requirements. Well, on advice of our attorneys that was involved, they said, no, we need to bring them into the PD. Okay, so, but basically they had done a lot of design work on setbacks based on downtown mixed use 2. So what that allows them to do is use the downtown mixed use 2 setbacks, which isn't that, meshes really with that urban downtown feel. It's the same thing we're wanting for our downtown. Exceptions right now in the PD, it requires Hammond's Ferry Builders Guild to be the contractors. And for Phase B, they would have an exception there so they could have their own contractors. That changed the definition of the front-loaded lot in Phase B. And this is also a controversial thing here that I want to address, is the allowance for perpendicular parking on Lafayette Street and Brissy Drive in Phase B. Currently, we do not have perpendicular parking in Hammond's Ferry at all. This would allow perpendicular parking. However, it's still in the ordinance because we need it right here on Brissy. But up here on Lafayette, we have gotten some concerns, and the developer has gotten some concerns from the community about, as it's shown on here, this perpendicular parking. The developer has been working closely with Hammond's Ferry, some of the owners of adjacent property in Hammond's Ferry. They've been working on their site plan, and I think they've got it worked out where they can go back to having having parallel parking here and increasing some parking on site on this side and back here. But I'm not at the point where I want to commit to that. the developer will be talking in a minute, and if I'll let him commit to that change right now, but I know that if he wants to commit to it, but I know that they're working hard to try to get this back to parallel parking. Allowance for setbacks on the urban lots in Phase B to comply with the downtown mixed use requirements. The maximum height on parcel C, the mixed use building in Phase B should not exceed 90 feet. 90 feet is what the PD allows for the hotel and the clubhouse. So that is where the 90 feet came from for that. Minimum height parcel G2 should be 12 feet. And then the master parking agreement shall control Riverside Village parking requirements. And that has been approved by City Council. So that's the cliff notes of all those strikes and underlines that you had in your report. Do I have any questions?
Again, just to summarize what our vote is for tonight, so that the public knows what we're voting for and voting on, and our recommendation to City Council. Just to clarify.
You are making a recommendation. This is a major modification by definition. So, no offense, I don't mean this derogatory, but Planning Commission does not have the authority to make that change. You make a recommendation to City Council, and then it's City Council's makes the final say. It is almost identical or very similar. When you think about the plan development, the general development plan, being the ordinance, the zoning ordinance for that particular area, it's really no difference than a rezoning application that you just heard, except it's a lot more work.
So just to clarify on Mr. Bigger's point, then it's just a yes or a no. We wouldn't be able to give, how we sometimes do with stipulations.
You can make recommendations for changes. You could, but it, yeah, then it'll be up to City Council if you they want to go with those recommendations, or if they want to leave it as is.
And then just one more question. So you said that top parcel there was going to be a nursing home, correct? Or assisted living facility?
This one here?
Yes.
It says elderly living, I think is what's in the plan. So that has always been a question of mine, because whenever I look at it being 4 stories, as it was in the existing plan, I find it hard to believe that it would be assisted living. Because typically, that you would have some above the ground floor. I think you would have to have independent living just from the fire codes.
Mm-hmm. And so then this parcel down here by the river, it was initially set for the same.
This one?
Nope, sorry,
This one?
It was initially planned to be the same type of mixed use development.
Correct.
Okay.
Just a different density.
Tommy, on the original plan, and I did try to look through to see if I could see it, we're in theory adding 234 more units, and we have 952 spaces for parking. What is there a ratio that we need to have per unit? Was that somewhere? Or did I miss it?
There is, and let me see if I brought that parking sheet. And I go back to the parking agreement, and when we laid it all out and did the numbers, there is, for, I think it's, for the PD, it's 1.5 parking space per dwelling unit or apartment, and for every 400 square feet of retail, you need a parking space. When we did all of that in with our available parking, and I've got to come back to you, make a long story short, on the parking allocation, if there's nothing going on down there, we've got an extra 824 parking spaces available. If we've got, worst case scenario, maxed out, everything going, everybody's home at the same time, the stores are full, stadium's full, we've got 19 more spaces than what would be required. Now, there may be some, yeah, that's the way the numbers fell out. But I would also remind you, though, that council has looked at the parking and has already approved the parking.
Any more questions of Mr. Paradise before we bring up the applicant? Is the applicant here to give us some insight on this request? Please, again, name and address, please.
Brooks Young, 2316 Betty Ann Court, Atlanta, Georgia. Tommy, do you have the flash drive?
Oh, I'm sorry.
View?
Hang on, let me pull that out.
While he pulls it up, I think Mr. Paradise did a great job talking about what we're here to discuss tonight. And before I get going on my little presentation here, I do want to say just how excited and honored we are to be here and to hopefully be a part of this incredible development and community that you all have already established. I mean, it really is a extremely special and unique place already, and we're here hoping to just kind of put the cherry on top and finish out these last few vacant parcels that exist within the village. So couldn't be more excited or honored to be here in front of you all tonight.
There you go.
There we go. So I'm with South City Partners. Actually, can we go to the next slide? So we're a mixed-use development group based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Since our inception, we've delivered about 4,000 multifamily units and over 200,000 square feet of retail space. We develop anything from suburban surface park deals to infill, high-rise downtown deals and kind of everything in between. But we do specialize in mixed-use projects similar to this one. So just won't waste a lot of y'all's time talking about our past projects, but I do think there are a couple that are relevant and similar to what we're talking about doing here. The first one being Alpharetta City Center. So Alpharetta is a suburb of Atlanta, and back in 2011, Alpharetta decided it was time to redevelop their downtown. They ultimately sent out an RFP, which South City Partners was selected. We won, and we went in and developed a mix of office, multifamily, and 72,000 square feet of retail space. And it was extremely well received. It completely revitalized downtown Alpharetta. Alpharetta is now considered, consistently ranked as one of the best downtowns in the southeastern United States. Again, just extremely, extremely well received by the city and all of the residents. A couple more that I'll touch on briefly. Inman Quarter was a project we did in the Inman Park neighborhood of Atlanta. And again, mixed-use deal, multifamily, retail. Again, extremely well received and just really helped to revitalize, liven up the energy in the area. One more that I would like to point to is Revival on Main, and this was in downtown Kennesaw, Georgia. And again, similar program, it's a mixed-use deal, multifamily with retail, and again, just really helped to make downtown Kennesaw a place and to bring the energy there and liven everything up. So Tommy just kind of did a great job of running through the master site plan, as well as I could have, and frankly, all of the changes that he mentioned to the PD, they are all changes that we're trying to make to bring this vision to life, what you see here. To the extent there are additional questions on the site plan, I'm happy to answer them, but again, Tommy did a good job of running through everything we're proposing here, so I guess at the end we can circle back to this to the extent there are more site plan questions. So wanted to show kind of parcel by parcel some renderings and the thought that we put into this. I will say on these renderings, they are still a work in progress. This is not final. We've been working closely with the city and with the Hammond's Ferry Design Review Board to make sure that we are meeting all of the intents of the design of the village, being respectful to the pattern book and everything that, the thought, the execution that's gone into everything that already exists. So having said that, on parcel K, this is the furthermost west parcel that we're talking about developing, closest to the neighborhood. So you'll see in this rendering, it's more of a residential feel for the design of this building. can't really see it, but they're, stoops that tie into the sidewalk here. So when you're standing on Railroad, it really feels more like townhomes. And again, it's more of a residential design as we were getting closer to the Hammonds Ferry residential district. And so Tommy again mentioned this. So we had initially proposed head-end parking on Lafayette, and in discussions with some residents at Hammonds Ferry and the Hammonds Ferry Design Review Board, it was made clear to us that it is very important to maintain parallel spaces along Lafayette to maintain keep the residential feel over there. So we understand that completely. So we were able to shrink the footprint of our building to accommodate the parallel spaces both on Lafayette and squeeze in some new ones over on the right side, east side of Parcel K that you'll see there. And so, as Tommy kind of alluded to, we will commit that we're not going to put head-end parking on Lafayette, parallel parking. We're going to keep with the residential feel and work with Hammonds Ferry there. So we are committing to putting parallel parking there. It will not be head-end. And so this is just kind of an example of the level of product that we strive to build to, just some courtyard and amenity spaces on Parcel K that would be looking out over the brick ponds. But again, just a good example from our drawings of what we're talking about actually building here. So as Tommy mentioned, so this is Parcel C. And so this is the parcel that you will see as you were driving in the main entry into the village. And Tommy touched on it again, but this is proposed for 87 units with 4,000 square feet of retail, a 5-story building. So I got on that one, Tommy. Again, another example of the courtyard and amenity space, just so everybody can see kind of what we're envisioning here. And so this will be Parcel G and H again as you move down to the bottom of the village, closer to the river, closer to the amphitheater. We're proposing here a 3-story building with 4,000 square feet of retail. And again, all of the buildings, they have similar design elements that tie them all together, but since they are all in individual spaces of the village, they all have kind of their unique twist on them as well. So they're different, but tied together with common architectural themes. And that's really all I have for the presentation. Again, we are extremely excited and extremely honored to be here and hopefully, become a member of this community and the development that you guys have already have in place. We couldn't be more excited, and I guess that will open it up to questions, comments, thoughts.
Anybody have any questions on the council from Mr. Young at this time? Have a seat and we'll move to the public. Excuse me. Move to the public comment section. Again, if you're interested in speaking, please step up to the mic. Again, as a reminder, name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Robert Lascola. I'm at 56 Fulton Street, which is in the Hammonds Ferry neighborhood. And very excited to see the renderings and looking forward, as I'm sure that many of my fellow Hammonds Ferry residents are, to the continued development of Riverside Village. I'd just like to make a couple of comments regarding the summary of it is that there is a potential for spillover effects from the increased growth and population in the Riverside Village with respect to parking and traffic going into phase A. And it may be that the city needs to consider increased enforcement and management of parking and traffic to mitigate those effects if the development is as successful as we're all hoping it will be. More specifically, currently there is a reluctance of people who are attending events at the park, at the ballpark, and at the restaurants to use the parking decks. They tend to park in areas, empty lots, on Railroad Avenue going into past Lafayette, even for the more popular events. As we have residents taking up more of the available spaces with the new developments, there's going to be increased competition for street traffic, and so there will have to be more effort made to have people attending events in Riverside Village to actually use the parking spaces, the parking decks as they are intended to according to the plan. Likewise, the traffic around the parking decks can get quite congested during events, especially at the end of events. And naturally, people want to get home as soon as possible and tend to go through the Hammonds Ferry neighborhood on their way out. And the streets aren't really designed for increased traffic, and certainly the speeds with which some people may be trying to escape. So increased attention to having those laws enforced or being able to direct traffic out up Center Street and up Riverside Drive, I guess it is over on the right, would be needed when we have that much population around. Finally, I have one question. It's noted in the plans that in case of increased need for traffic to get out, that West Avenue may be developed further, and if there could be some comments made as to where that extension would be envisioned, because I don't imagine that the plan is to go plowing through the Medac building and then over one of the brick ponds and tying into railroad down there. So comments as to what's envisioned would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Stetson Corbett, 434 Railroad Avenue, which happens to be right next to the village. If I can borrow your pointer. And I have a couple of questions before I get into this part. First question is, I guess maybe to y'all, if commission recommends to council to move this forward, is this plan as close to it as it can possibly be? Is that what it's going to be?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is the zoning ordinance for Phase B of Riverside Village. So, if they wanted to go differently, they would have to come back and get a modification. I was in a to answer your question, if I can borrow my pointer back again, I'm sorry. I was in a conversation earlier today about this parcel. And why didn't we why are we being so specific, and why don't we loosen it up? Well, the answer to that is by being specific, we tie whoever down so that you know what's going there. And if they change it to something else, they have to come back and do exactly what they're doing here tonight, and the public gets an opportunity to speak. Now, when I say that, there's always, some fudge, the administrative stuff of the building being a little bit closer, a little bit further, that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, and let me first of all say I am all for the completion of Riverside Village. I love the ballpark. I live down there. I'm all for variances if you need them. Get a little bit more here and a little less there and make this piece of trim look like that. That is not my concern. But to kind of piggyback on what Tommy was talking about, having to go through the revisions of what it was going to look like and what it is going to look like. If I remember correctly, when we first had this was all going to be single family homes down here. This was going to be senior living up here, and that was office. We already talked about that. And I think the parking portion that council took up on Monday, that was first reading, wasn't it, Jim? One reading only? Okay, so there is no other reading on that. Okay. And I talked to a couple of council people, and my first thought was, oh my God, they're just going to build a whole bunch of apartments down there, and we're going to lose the vision of Riverside Village. And I was told, oh, just take a look at these things. We're going to do businesses and restaurants and all that good stuff on the bottom and do housing above it. So I had a little bit different perspective to look at. I pulled this up from the council notes. And when I started looking at it in the beginning, I was under the false impression that these were all single units that were going through here. And I kind of came to the conclusion, wow, that's not going to be so bad. But when we looked at what the numbers were, when you start counting squares, we went from 39 apartments to 170 apartments up here. We went from 12 apartments to 87 apartments up here. And we went from
18 to 58 here. And that began to change the realization of what we had and kind of what some of the vision for the Riverside Village was. I am all about the growth. I'm just extremely concerned about the amount of traffic overflow that we're going to have. I did hear the numbers for the parking spaces, and y'all please correct me if I'm wrong, because I tried to put some math together for this. But I had the hotel parking deck being at 451 spots. Is that a correct number?
That sounds about right. I'm
Okay.
looking for my numbers. Go ahead.
Okay. And I had the stadium parking deck being at 538 spaces.
The stadium deck is 538 spaces.
Okay, so
The hotel deck is 451 spaces.
okay, so we're pretty good there. If you read the little subtitles for each of the little apartment units, it specifies how many units of parking spaces in the decks will come out to be used for those apartment spots. Let's see here. For parcel K, which is the largest one up there, we'd take 160 hotel spots and we'd take 60 stadium spots. And then for G and H, the one over there by the stadium deck, we'd take 17 out of the hotel and we'd take 2 out of the stadium. And then for parcel C down at the bottom, we would take 135 spots out of the stadium deck. Now, by my math, that's 615 spots that would be taken out of the available parking. So if you have no shopping, no restaurant, no green jackets going on, all that stuff, and everything else is full, we've lost 615 parking spots. Green jackets, thankfully and happily, they do 4,200 people average on a night. So if you assume 4 people in all of those cars, you got 2,460 people that you accommodated. That's far short, and you've already run out of parking spaces. So just looking at it simply from a parking standpoint, we got a problem.
If I may.
Yes, sir.
You did not include the MEDAC building, which is part of Riverside Village.
Okay.
It included for parking for the stadium use. And they currently use that parking, and that gives you an additional 601 spaces. There's also 600 spaces on private property that will be in the development. And we also have 100 spaces here at City Hall that can be used when the stadium is being used.
Okay. Well, forgive me for leaving the MEDAC out, but I thought that was going to go to the oncology area.
That's during
in the
the day.
Beacon, the development up at the top of the hill.
No, that goes at MEDAC building during the day, and then whenever those are not being used, it reverts back to city use.
Okay.
So they'll be there at night for the ball games.
Gotcha. And then the other 600 spots that you referred to, aren't they already allocated to the Ironwood?
Most of them are.
Okay.
Either that or their own private parcels that's allocated out. Like, if I can borrow a pointer.
Yes, sir.
And I don't have the number exactly with me, but right here, these are on private property. The ones on Brissy will be on the public road. It may perpendicular, but these are private parking here, and we're going to that 600 count. Along with these here, then all of these will have on-site parking in their garages that count in there and here as well.
Understood. Okay. Well, again, I'm not trying to, I want the development to be finished. I have a large stake in it. It just concerns me how many apartments we're going to throw in there. A lot of the residents would like to see grocery or a small store or something like that that we can walk down to, and more retail and shopping and less high density. I know the contractor's got to make money for putting the stuff down there, but I hope we can find a little better equation than that many apartments.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Amy Schoenbaum. I live at 1010 Westo Street, and I'm also in Phase A of Hammond's Ferry. First of all, thank you so much for your designs. I really like looking at them. I also would like to see the village finished. I also share the parking concerns. So Parcel K is probably the one I'm most concerned about. So on site, there's 170 units, and on site, there's only 36 parking spots. So it would be closer to park in Hammond's Ferry for a lot of those tenants than it would be to use some of the other decks. And if I was renting an apartment, I definitely would pick the closest spot, especially if I'm coming home at night. I would not fault anyone for that. The one right across from the stadium that's getting 87 units only has 6 parking spots on site for 87 units. Again, I know they're saying that these could be designated spots in the parking deck. I just don't see it. When I drove here tonight, almost all the street parking was full, and at least the bottom deck I saw when I drove by was full. And there's nothing going on tonight down there. Okay, the other concern I have is I would love people to come to North Augusta and set down roots. We have the Ironwood Apartments, which are great. A lot of people coming to the Augusta area move there temporarily until they find where they want to move permanently. In fact, my husband and I tried to live in Ironwood, but there wasn't any ones that would take a pet at the time. So I would like to see this be condos, not apartments. I want people to stay. I want people to invest. I want all those students that are getting their medical degrees and their nursing degrees to come and stay in North Augusta. I don't want them there for a year. I don't want loose furniture on the road when people move out. This is 94.1% tenants. And if the townhomes are owner occupied, that is 5.9% of the new units. So I'm not really thrilled with 94% people maybe only staying a year or two. Like, let's make this the jewel of our community. I would love to see luxury condos. And I think that they would be given a parking spot if they bought a luxury condo, or maybe even a garage. So the townhomes I'm happy about if they're owner occupied. I don't mind some apartments, but this seems like too much. And also on Parcel I, which is the lower townhomes, it didn't mention any parking at all, or is that the one that says 11 spaces? No, it's 11 townhomes. It doesn't even mention any spaces. So are those ones for purchase?
No, those are garages. They'll have garages and
Oh,
park
good.
in the back.
Okay.
If you look, going in the wrong direction. Here we go. This is a roadway going here, so they'll rear load and garages in the back. Same with these here. They'll rear load with the garages in the back, and these spaces here will be for the retail.
Oh, okay, good. And the townhomes will be for sale, not for rent.
We can't, as the city, we cannot control whether it's rental or whether it's owner occupied.
So you can only zone multifamily. You can't zone condo.
You can't, if I own a house okay, and I want to live in that house as the owner, that's my decision. If I want to rent it, own that house, and want to rent it to somebody, I can do that. The question is does it meet the zoning ordinance? What's the use? The use is single-family residential.
Right.
So whether it is a townhome, you know, as far as that townhome, it'll meet the requirements for townhomes. But as whether that townhome owner wants to rent it or live in it is up to the owner.
Oh, I understand that. What I mean is, will these be sold when they are available? The townhomes will be sold. Okay, but the apartment buildings will be rentals. Correct. Okay, so that's fine. It doesn't matter if an owner decides to rent it. I would just like there to be people invested in our community and in our city on a more permanent basis. So, you know, maybe like one more apartment building is fine. But this is just, I believe, too many. And this is a real opportunity to decide the trajectory of kind of our, you know, our secondary downtown, right? And how do we want it to look? So those are my concerns.
Thank you.
Woody Schuler, 422 Railroad Avenue, North Augusta. And I think that's parcel K, the top left, is that correct? Yes. That is my concern as well. I'm a block from there. And the gentleman mentioned earlier, we already see, or I see, in the short time I've been in Hammond's Ferry, a lot of encroachment into part Plan A, where I am. And I see even more, these people will take the path of least resistance and go through Plan A. That is a nightmare, that little traffic circle, the little sliver there, and where that little development's going to go there on the other side, two people meeting there are going to have a wreck sooner or later. I traverse Railroad Avenue multiple times a day on foot and by car. And as the young lady said tonight, there's cars on both sides of Railroad. So Railroad struggles to handle the traffic, in my opinion, the two-way traffic on non-event nights. When you have event nights, and the Green Jackets have 70 home games, tons of other events at SRP Park besides the Green Jacket. The Crown Plazas seem to be highly successful. Railroad struggles as it is with that. If we add 170 units there at Parcel K, the encroachment into Plan A or Site A of Hammond's Ferry will just intensify and get worse. And my concern is the safety, whether it's pedestrians or traffic accidents, cars, because it's two-way traffic. Cars are getting bigger. Everybody's got a big old truck. And it's going to be difficult. I mean, even on a night like tonight, both sides of Railroad have cars parked parallel. So in event nights, they're all exiting through A, coming right through my area of Hammond's Ferry. So my concern is the safety piece. I'd love to see something go there, retail, something we could go shop and not have to leave Riverside Village to get groceries, whatever it may be. But I'm really concerned that 170 units are going to bring multiple cars, vehicles, not necessarily permanent residents. And the safety issue is really what I'm concerned about, because I'm up and down Railroad multiple times a day. So I'd hope the commission would consider the safety aspect of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schuler.
Good evening. My name's Steve Cover. I'm 444 Arrington Avenue in North Augusta. I'm also a resident in Hammond's Ferry. And I did want to thank Tommy and the developers. They both spent time with me this past week talking about different things, aspects of this. I am too very much in favor of the development downtown. It's been wonderful living in this area and the things that are going on around the village. And so I think we most of the people in Hammond's Ferry really want that to continue. I just wanted to state that I agree with the sentiments of the talking points that have been up here yet so far this evening. We do have concerns about the parking and about the additional traffic in the neighborhood. We would like to see a comprehensive plan about how the city's going to manage that as we move forward. Just to point out something that hasn't been talked about to date or to this point, I just want the commissioners to understand that in that parking garage closest to Parcel K, where the big apartment complex is going to be, the elevator for that parking garage is at the far end of that garage away from the apartment complex. So as we talk about people taking the path of least resistance, they're most likely going to choose not to walk away from the parking garage or away from the apartment complex to the other end to go up four stories to get into their car. They're going to take the easiest path and move into Hammond's Ferry for parking. And with the congestion that's been talked about, we do see additional traffic coming through Hammond's Ferry, and that's why I think it's critical from a public safety perspective on what our plan is going to be, how public safety is going to be able to access the homes that are within Hammond's Ferry during these events, and as we increase the parking and congestion in the area. And I just would like for the commission to make sure we're taking those things into consideration as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that needs to speak before he comes back with an additional comment? Anybody else that wants to get in? Anybody need a microphone taken up to them?
So my name is Sophia Galifianakis. I'm at 56A Fulton Street. I think everybody really loves this idea and wants this to work. The main thing is the traffic concern and the safety concern. And I'm just wondering if the developer has any proposals for making it more pedestrian friendly, limiting the amount of traffic as much as possible. And I know downtown Kennesaw, they do that in some of these areas. And the other thing was the apartments. I totally agree. And I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but if we could use, instead of rental apartments, high density apartments, have more like townhomes, condos, something that people own, and they take more pride in the ownership, and they invest and build roots here. So I just want to reiterate those things. Thank you.
My name is Joyce Waugh, and I live at 615 Arrington. And I have just a couple comments. In the beginning, I heard them say that because of COVID and the change in retail space had changed. However, when I looked at what they were planning, there's going to be retail under these apartments. So I don't see why taking the original design retail space away, but adding it and all these apartments on the other end. That's the first thing I'm concerned about. The second thing that I'd like to share is Halloween in Hammond's Ferry brings an additional, I couldn't tell you how many trick-or-treaters. But I left because I didn't want to participate in trick-or-treating that night, and trying to get back into Hammond's Ferry, I sat for 30 minutes outside our entrance trying to get back into the neighborhood. Now, this is not all these apartments and all these people. These are trick-or-treaters, and there are less of them than's going to be in these apartments. We can't handle that traffic. We just can't. It's impossible in the amount of roads that we have in and out of Hammond's Ferry right now. Thank you.
Mr. Corbett wanted one more minute to conclude the public comments.
One other question. The parking spaces that will be allocated in the parking decks to the residential areas, do they go on top? Do they go on the bottom? And are they going to belong to the people? They're going to be numbered, anything like that? Or is it first come, first serve? How do you control it? Okay, if I have an apartment and I have 10 vehicles, can I park all 10 of my vehicles in there and utilize 9 spots that somebody else should be allocated for? Okay. So if I lease a spot, I understand that part. If I have one car and I lease a spot and there are no spaces available, how are they going to deal with that? How, the city, the apartments, whatever. I'm coming home and I have no spot. Correct. I'm just curious.
No other comments from the public? Okay, at this point, if the, excuse me, the applicant could come back up and address some of the questions that were brought up by the public comments.
Alrighty. So I guess the big one here is parking. We heard that question several times. And so what I would say, I guess, just high level to start off with, and then if there are specific questions, we can get further into it. But what I would say to that, we are no strangers to building urban projects like this. We have worked painstakingly with the city to figure out a plan that can park everybody. Frankly, we have more parking spaces here than we typically would in a project like this, being at 1.5 a unit. And to Parcel K specifically, again, which that seems to be the bigger concern, parking of Parcel K. So you're an apartment resident, you lease a spot from the city through us, as mentioned, you have your decal, you have your parking spot in the deck. So you go in there and park, and we have intentionally set up the building so that our entrance is on the far right side into Parcel K, right there next to the deck. So it makes it convenient to get there. And frankly, in our experience, if you are renting a covered, structured parking space, you're going to utilize that. I mean, there's frankly the more coveted spaces than leaving your car out in the elements and just parking on the street. So again, just from our experience, we believe that will work, and we believe that we have adequate coverage on the parking that we've worked out with the city. And again, specific questions, happy to answer them. I think it was kind of high level. What I heard here was Parcel K and how does that work, and access into the building from that parking deck.
And just to make sure I understood from the earlier plan, the residents of Parcel K, a percentage of them will be in the adjacent deck, but another percentage of them will be 2 blocks down at the stadium deck. Is that correct? What's the split of parking that's going to have to be down at, that's going to have a reserved spot at the existing stadium deck?
So I don't have that number in front of me, but essentially, if you live in Parcel K, you're going to be parking either on the on-site spaces that we've built, or you will be in the hotel deck. There are, in the event that there is a large event that parking spaces are taken, which does not happen during your typical Green Jackets game. It's 8 or 10 nights a year where there's a large event. We have allocated additional spaces if needed in the stadium deck. But in your typical day-to-day, even if there's a Green Jackets game, et cetera, that it won't be necessary. That's just to make sure that we're satisfying everybody. And in case there is a large event where it is required, we have set some spaces aside in the stadium deck as overflow, as a backup plan. But the reality is, if you live in Parcel K, you'll be parking either on site right there, or you'll be in the hotel deck.
just kind of goes along with this. Just I'm sure you have more points, but we mentioned the West Avenue potential extension. Could you go into what exactly?
Yes, I'm honestly, I'm not sure. We're not involved with that. I don't know. Wish I could answer the question for you.
Let me have that one.
Okay.
You got that down?
Go ahead. Better you than me.
That's fine. Commissioner, there are no plans on the books to extend West Avenue down into Hammond's Ferry or either Phase A or Phase B. We just had a council action to approve the recommended capital project sales tax list to the county council for inclusion in the referendum. There are a number of projects in there. There are no mention of projects of an extension of the West Avenue out of the downtown corridor into Hammond's Ferry. So even, I get that may be written in a document somewhere, but there is no resource plan associated with that, and there is no traffic study. There is no documentation that the city has enacted to move forward on any plan in that kind of way. And from a personal opinion, I'm not sure that's a warranted connection. So there's been no efforts made under either council guidance or administration to do that connection.
And in a similar vein, I think parking enforcement was brought up. I can't speak to the city parking enforcement, but we're certainly willing to do whatever we can to help work with the city to help on that front as well. And I think just generally speaking on the apartment concerns, man, what I would tell you is what we've put in front of you all here is a project that we can execute on, that we can deliver. And it's something that we all want to be proud of. Again, we want, at the end of the day, everyone to be happy, and we want to build something that we're all proud of. And, again, that's why it's a mixed-use deal. We did include 10,000 square feet of retail. But, again, this is something that we can execute on, and that's how we landed where we are today.
Related to the question, and it may be something Mr. Clifford can address, I believe in the city council meeting there was some comment about stronger enforcement of parking as part of this agreement. Could you elaborate on that, please? Parking violations.
Again, Commissioner, there are a number of concerns regarding parking, and I would not disagree with any of the residents that have come down this evening to talk about parking and parking concerns. And so I'll bin those, if you will, into two main categories. So one is the existing parking issue that we have now. If you go down to the stadium, you can see people parking around in spots that are not marked. Sometimes they get up on the sidewalk. They'll park in a number of different places that are not assigned for vehicular traffic. And so that is an existing problem that we have. And then to the point of our residents in Hammond's Ferry, hey, how's this going to affect our ability to park on the street as we go forward? And so I would tell you that what I've received as administrator from the city council is a strong desire to come up with a plan that's going to address really those two major issues. But the desire of the council at this point in time is to get through any amendments and changes that we have to the village that includes the master parking agreement that was just passed, and then to see if this actually goes through all the wickets to see if this will be approved to even develop. Because if it is, then there are going to have to be some changes in how we do enforcement within the village. And I could certainly envision in an urban area, and certainly I look at not the residential portion, quite frankly, but the retail component areas. You'll see in larger cities that they have contracts with tow companies that if cars are parked in certain places or on the sidewalk, then they're just towed. And then that becomes a problem between the driver and the tow truck company. Or they have options for booting vehicles. So there's some of the things that we've been in discussion with for kind of the east side of the development. And then on the west side for the parking, we need to have a discussion with the homeowner association, with the developer, and all concerned parties to see what options are out there. I know we've heard some desire to have either a parking sticker or hang tag or some other way to identify vehicles that belong to Hammond's Ferry residents and whether they can park there on the street or not. We also have to balance that against the public use of streets. And so those are some of the things we're going to have to take a look at. And I think there are valid concerns about apartment folks parking in the Hammond's Ferry area, and certainly worried about Ball Stadium folks on game nights driving further down into Hammond's Ferry. Part of what we're looking at with the stadium is trying to increase, as these projects potentially come online, increasing density of trolley routes so that we can get more folks off-site and get them up into the downtown corridor for off-site parking if that's required to take some of the load off. So I think there's a lot of things that are on the table right now that I know the council is interested in pursuing, but they are not going to do anything formally, to my knowledge, until these discrete actions that are going to be before them are passed.
Thank you.
And then I guess one more thing just to touch on real quick. I think there was some mention of wanting a market, et cetera, here, and that is, just so everybody knows, on parcel D, that 2,000 square feet, that is envisioned to be, that's like a Savvy Provisions. If you've ever been to one of those, a market where you can go and shop, buy food, drinks, et cetera. And then we would envision on both G and H and on C, there would be at least one restaurant in both of those, and then there would be additional, just general retail shopping to fill out those parcels.
Yeah, and I believe it was Miss Wall asked about, why not more retail? What was the change from the original plan as far as the amount of retail do you have in that?
The original PD as it was written, I'm not sure. We weren't involved in the original PD as written. I'm not sure.
I don't have that offhand.
Commissioner, just to make a general comment, if you don't mind, about parcel C. The original plan for parcel C was, some retail space on the ground floor, but ultimately what it was supposed to be was a Class A office space building, which is not to be confused with the retail space of stores. So this was more along the lines of like a taller version of the MedAct building, which would be leased by corporations for the space that they would need to do business here in the CSRA. And as we've seen here in the market, the Class A office space market is certainly slowed, if not declined, in recent months and years. We had some that are growing, but not to the extent that we would like to see. So as the developer dealt with the city, we talked about the option of doing a Class A office space building. The developer felt that was going to be very hard for them to fill at any kind of reasonable rate based on the size of the building that they had. And so the compromise that was reached as opposed to a pure apartment or residential complex was to make sure that there was a strong retail component on the bottom floor to really complement the rest of the village. And as the city council has given guidance to the staff about what was important to them going into this project was maintaining the highest density of retail that would be possible and supportable here within the village, to the point of restaurants and stores that were going to support a live, work, play environment.
And just again, additional clarification. Don't we already have existing Class A office space in the clubhouse building that's been vacant for?
We have 14,000 square feet of office space in the clubhouse building that has not ever been filled, at least not since I've been here.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I have
Go ahead.
just when you gave a presentation month and a half ago, and I don't remember if you mentioned this, for the 5 buildings, was there a completion, like we're going to have them done in X amount of months, or is there a plan for that?
Yes, so it's separated out basically. So C, K, and G and H are on a similar trajectory. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we agreed to begin construction of those by December of this year, and they will be completed within, what did we say, December of 24 months. But the reality is the plan right now would be to start in June on those 3 parcels, and D&I would come, in the 6 months behind those. The townhomes are not as complicated to build. It's a different kind of construction. We'll be a general contractor. So C, K, G, and H would go together, and that would be looking at a summer start, while D and I would come subsequently behind them within 6 or 8 months. And we have guaranteed to the city those completion dates, but with and the PD.
I believe someone asked about walkability. I was going to see if you could talk a little bit about how your plan, how it looks. We saw some of the pictures, but like what kind of sidewalk size are you talking about in front of these? Well, and even like right there near the traffic circle, I guess at parcel D, it looks there's a sidewalk there now. Will that just stay the same, or will that be?
They will most likely stay the same. I wish I had my dimensional plans in front of me, but we will build to code. There's a code requirement on the width of the sidewalks, but we will also put in extensive landscaping, street lighting, and we will tie our buildings into the sidewalks so it is very walkable. That's if you move in here, that will be a very important part of why you come, right? You want to be able to walk and enjoy the retail, enjoy the green line. So we will make sure that we're integrated and it's all very walkable.
Did y'all look at any alternatives on K on ways y'all could add additional parking? We look at the total parking, and I think we got 19 surplus. If everything's full involved, I think that's less than 1% of the total parking down there. When it was senior living, the seniors don't, quarter of them might have a car. So I think the overall parking originally as designed was probably more in line. Adding these apartments, probably 2 cars per apartment, that's pushing the limits. I mean, like I said, a less than 1%. Were there any thoughts or looks at what we could do to get more parking in K? I mean, have you done any underground or first level, second level parking with third, fourth level units?
So to answer the question, yes, well, we've looked at every alternate possible. And this is, again, working with the city, this is where we landed for something that we think works for both of us. But to go a step further than that, I should have mentioned this initially. So these buildings, we're 70% one-bedroom units here, 30% two-bedroom units. So typically in this environment, what we see is 1.25 to 1.3 cars to the unit. In reality, we are parked at 1.5 here as required by the code. So again, because we're so heavy one bedroom, skewed, we typically don't see as many vehicles as you might in a project that say is a 50-50 split between ones and twos.
Has it been considered in the other developments that you guys did to make some of these buildings be owner occupied condo sold units? And have you seen that work anywhere else?
So, that's just it's a completely different strategy than what we do. We're not condo developers. It's a whole different world. It's a whole different ballgame. So that is not something
that's not on the table for you guys. Okay.
It's not.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Young. If you'll have a seat. Conversation amongst the commissioners.
I have a question for Tommy. If we were to recommend, or like the majority voted no, and then city council also voted no, are they completely back at the drawing board on all of these parcels?
If this plan is rejected, and again, not to be rude or out of line, but the final decision of council is what counts. So even if you recommended approval and council turned it down, then they're back to the drawing board. And they probably, I would have to check the code, but typically you can't make an application for a year after it's been denied. Now, or without significant changes. So this is what's before you, and I don't know what kind of recommendations you would want to make. I have to say I've heard a lot about parking, and that is something that staff looked at hard, and they got tired of us counting parking spaces. And my code enforcement guys got tired of counting parking spaces. So it is something that's been really, really looked at hard. Council has looked at the parking and approved the master parking agreement Monday night. So the parking issue, and again, but it's kind of been asked and answered with council on Monday night.
Sure.
My name's Tex Maxwell. I live at 19 Phoenix Street. And I know parcel K has always been planned to be apartments. Now just instead of being senior apartments, it's going to be just regular conventional apartments. But at one time, there was a concept of putting the parking deck below those apartments, and building apartments above new parking decks. I think Commissioner Harbison sort of touched on that a little bit, but the question is that not feasible anymore? Because that would stop us from taking existing parking spaces away from the existing parking deck.
We did look at that with the developer and had him run the numbers on it. The developer did look at that, and that was not a path forward that they could take. I don't know. You'd have to talk to the developer. But I know that was, not an avenue for him.
Yeah, Mr. Schuler.
422 Railroad. I hate to see the meeting close on just finding a solution for parking. A parked car is not a safety issue. When those parked cars from 170 multifamily units spill onto Railroad Avenue, that's where the safety issue comes. And by and large, most of them are going to exit through a path of least resistance, not going 15 miles an hour. So just wanted to, parking is half of it. It's when those parked cars start moving, where the safety comes in. And that's 170 more in parcel K, which really concerns me because I'm up and down Railroad all the time on foot and in car. So parking is just half of it. Just want to make sure that's front and center too. It's when they start moving is when the safety.
And again, just I guess clarifying on what you said a minute ago, Mr. Paradise, regarding parcel K, which seems to be one of the main points of contention here. Feasibility from the developer standpoint to reduce it from 5 floors to 3, or to put 2 floors of parking underneath it and make it 3 floors, because it's a 5-story building, right?
Parcel K is 4.
It's 4 stories. Okay.
And there was discussion with him about could we do a floor of parking or underground parking and that kind of thing. And the fruit of that discussion was it wasn't feasible for him.
For that clarification.
Sorry, Mr. Paradise, this is just a clerical question. So we can make, or we can have a vote and also include recommendations to council when we send it to them, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, recommend, if you want to recommend, a change in the ordinance somewhere.
Amy Schoenbaum, 1010 West O Street. I would just say that a lot of us are really supportive of the development in general, getting something in there, but I think a lot of us have significant concerns, and if we had to have a say on this exact plan, at least I would not be in favor of it, even though I would love to see a lot of it go in. But I'm worried that city council will think like everyone was for it if it gets a yes vote from a lot of you. So it's just something to consider. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussions? Somebody like to make a motion?
It's a tough one. Obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me personally, and I really loved your renderings and plans. I think they look really good, and they would fit in the neighborhood and enhance it. Definitely better than just vacant lots. But my personal concern is the parcel K, and I think that's everyone seems to be the concern. So just my 2 cents. I wish we could approve like the other 4 and not one, but that's not what we're being dealt right now. So just my 2 cents on that. Not very helpful. And I'm assuming, I'm not an engineer, obviously, but there's no way to connect that parking deck to the Parcel K apartments, like with a breezeway or anything to encourage people to actually park there. I'm assuming probably not, but
Parcel K has a driveway between it and the parking garage
Yes.
to access Brick Pond.
Yes.
So that wouldn't allow for connectivity.
Obviously, very important subject matter. Any other questions, comments we need to discuss?
No, I think we all recognize, and we all live here too, when we go down for events and we see what's down there. And I'm guilty of parking on the curb in the grass myself when I don't want to walk as far. So give me a ticket. But, you know, I think we all recognize that. And I think if obviously council's aware of it too, you know, if we can mitigate whatever we can, whatever steps that is going forward, if it's more trolley runs or whatever the case is, to give more access.
Call for a recommendation.
I think what I would say is that sometimes you have to fix a problem when it happens, and you can't always just plan ahead knowing what it will or won't look like. This is definitely a tough situation, and just like with the previous one, you know, if we say no, who knows what else could come in that could be worse. I feel like they have done a lot of thinking and looking into it with the city. It's definitely a tough call, but I think all agree that we need something, and trying to be specific on what it is. I don't know that we can have something that everybody's always going to agree on. And I guess I'll be the one to make a recommendation for PDM 24-001 to be approved, or to make a recommendation to council.
With any conditions in that, or just as presented?
If anybody else has any conditions you'd like to throw in there, I'm open to it. I am not smart enough as far as traffic goes. It seems like they have done a lot of looking into that, and I trust that that the studies that they've done and looked into it, just have to trust that they know what they're doing.
All right. I have a motion from Commissioner Elliott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Slade. Excuse me?
I think you thought I was speaking and it came out of your microphone.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking in the wrong direction. From Commissioner Waddell, thank you very much. All right, time for a vote. All in favor of approving the recommendation to council, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
nay.
2 nays, 4 ayes in favor.
Right. Okay. Checking my math here. I was trying to get to 7, and there's not 7 there. 4. Yeah. Okay. And who made the second on the motion?
I did, Mr. Burgos.
I'm sorry, I had mislaid.
Apologies. All right.
We're good.
All right. Thank you all very much for your time this evening.
Yeah, take a little break.
We'll take a 5-minute recess. Our chair, Dr. Crawford, is continuing to recuse herself from the next agenda item. We will start with RWA 24-001, the Wanager Run right-of-way abandonment. Request by the City of North Augusta to abandon a right-of-way known as Wanager Run in the Riverside Village development between Esplanade Avenue and Brissy Drive. Mr. Paradise, any additional information we need to know?
Chairman, this goes back to your last application. As you noticed on G and H, this was a parking area right in here for G and H. Right now, the city owns this right-of-way here. The city wishes to abandon that right-of-way so this project on G and H can move forward. With this right-of-way here, it's an obstacle and basically puts city maintenance and right-of-way liability and activities on the city, where now it will be going to the private developer that's going to be owning and developing the parcel.
Thank you very much. Is the developer here for any additional comments on this request?
Yeah, so I think we kind of just went through the whole spiel and talked about what we're trying to do here, and this is just a part of that. So for G&H to come to fruition, as discussed, Wanager will need to be abandoned to build that piece of the project. I think that's really, unless there's any additional questions, that's really all I have to add this time.
Any additional questions of the developer? Any public comment on the right-of-way abandonment? Seeing none, we'll move to further discussion from commissioners. Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the request for the abandonment of the right-of-way?
I'll make a motion for RWA 24-001, Wanager Run, right-of-way abandonment.
I have a motion from Mr. Harbison. Second from Mr. Elliott. May I have a vote? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Welcome back.
Want to thank Commissioner Bigger for pitch hitting for me and covering that discussion. So thank you, great job. And we are moving on to PP 23-002, Forest Bluff Section 2, Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat, for both an application as well as waiver request. So.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Chairman. This is for the preliminary plat approval for Forest Bluff Section 2. It's zoned R7 and consists of 51.53 acres. The development will include 72 townhomes and 30 single-family detached residences. The applicant requests waivers from the maximum block length of Table 14-2 and minimum access score required by Table 14-6. A recommendation is for the Planning Commission approval of the major subdivision preliminary plat for Forest Bluff Section 2 is appropriate, subject to the following waivers. Basically, a waiver granted that Bye-Bye Drive, which exceeds the maximum 650 feet block length for a local street as specified in Table 14-2, and a waiver be granted to allow an access score of 3, which is less than the minimum required by Table 14-6. And also, as a condition that the waivers apply only to this phase of the subdivision, will not apply to any future development on the site should this plan not be developed. Its site plan is substantially revised. The site plan and any additional waivers would require Planning Commission approval as determined by the Planning Director. The approval includes certification of the road names Bye-Bye Drive and Andine Drive, and final approval of the master subdivision preliminary plat application be granted by staff when the plans are in substantial compliance with the requirements of the NADC. There's still a few outstanding loose ends that need to be tied up there.
All right, thank you. The applicant, please come forward. Any questions for Mr. Paradise?
Just a quick question on this graphic that's here. That's not, doesn't match what's in our package. Well, that does. Okay. But that doesn't.
Is that the one you're using?
Okay.
I'll let the applicant explain. We had a change on yesterday in the application on how they would be cited. And the reason we went ahead and moved forward with the application was that it was making the parcels larger. If they were making the parcels more dense, we were required to go back for public notification. But since they're making them larger, less dense, it seemed appropriate that we could move forward.
All right, thank you. Jason Winter with Ivy Development and Mackey Property Development, 672 Industrial Park Drive, Evans, 30809. Tommy's gone through the overview of the types of lots. The change that shows on the plan up here tonight is we were going through some final tweaking on grading last couple of weeks, and we have some step downs in townhomes. So you're stepping down the hill, right? And so what we really started digging in, and we had what we felt was too much of a step down between the blocks of townhomes that had 4 units together. So it really causes a problem in the driveways, because then you have 3 and 4 feet of separation between driveways, and the driveways are fairly close. So it works out a lot better to split most of those 4-unit blocks into groups of 2. There's no increase in number of units and no change in the lot layout. We didn't realize that when we submitted the revised plans back in February, but we wanted to get something to Tommy and the staff before this meeting, so we weren't coming back tomorrow or next week and, kind of the appearance of sliding something through. So this is the plan that works for us. Other than some minor staff revisions, we don't have any other changes that we are proposing. One thing I do want to point out is we learned this in phase 1. This zoning does not require a buffer in between what we're developing in Lyndhurst or Knollwood. But we typically go back in and plant trees on the slopes around the outer perimeter. So we showed that on phase 1, and then we went through the final plat process, and because we showed the pine trees that we were not required to have on the final plat, we had to include the cost of those in the letter of credit. So on this one, I'm going to go on record to say we will still plant the trees that are shown in the development plans, but I would ask that those not be a requirement of the letter of credit cost, because they're not part of the city's ordinance requirement. So other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, are there any questions for Mr. Winter?
Just clarification on the road access. This phase 2 will connect to Bobby, or however we're pronouncing that word, and give a second access point for this Ivy development out of the neighborhood. Then.
That's correct.
And the green forest that's in the middle left of the page looks to have a lot in front of it, but there's still an open space. But I believe from phase 1, the topography of that road was too steep to get into this neighborhood. So that's completely off the table, that green forest won't connect into this at some point. Or can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, no, we don't have any plans connected. There's an existing 16-inch city water main. It runs right up through there. And so that controls the grading. And so that stays as is.
Are there any questions, Mr. Windsor? All right, are there any, I'm assuming that there are none from the public. Any other questions or comments from the public? Okay. All right, given that there is none, we will move straight into discussion and or a motion if there is any. And just for a note, please note the conditions that are recommended by staff, which Mr. Paradise just went over. Again, that they apply only to this phase, include certification, and the minor plat will be granted by staff. So if there is a motion, please, again, ask that the motion reflects both the waivers and the conditions as outlined by the staff. Any comments or conversation?
Is that letter of credit in the conditions? Or is that something we need to add to that?
That would be something that you would need to add.
Okay. All right, so is that you making a motion?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'll make the motion to approve PP 23002 Section 2, the waivers and conditions on staff with the additional
With the additional information provided by applicant with regards to a commitment to trees that they not be included in a line of credit.
That's it.
Line of credit. Let's close on a credit letter. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Thank you. All right. So you have been busy. Mr. Paradise, is there anything additionally to the staff report besides preparing for today's meeting and council's meeting last week that you would like to share?
No, ma'am, not really.
He's done. All right. And again, we thank you for all that you and your department do to take care of us and to plan for a better city of North Augusta. So thank you again for all of your hard work. And that being said, I will adjourn this meeting.